Kasumi Miwa. Miwa knows exactly what she is, and that's actually kind of rare. She's not the strongest, not the smartest, and she doesn't pretend otherwise. A lot of characters in this series have massive egos that get them killed, so that self-awareness says something real about her emotional intelligence. But knowing your limits isn't the same as pushing past them. In actual fights, Miwa isn't cooking up creative solutions or reading 3 moves ahead. She follows orders, executes her technique cleanly, and works hard. Her simple domain is a solid technique, but it's also pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of creative application happening there. She's a good student, disciplined and dependable. But dependable isn't the same as exceptional. But among jujutsu sorcerers, she's pretty middle of the pack. The world she lives in just raises the floor for everyone, making her IQ somewhere around 100 to 110. Yuji Itadori. Yuji isn't writing battle plans on a whiteboard, but calling him dumb completely misses what he actually does well. He learns curse techniques at a ridiculous pace. The speed at which he picked up Divergent Fist and then Black Flash is genuinely abnormal. He picks up on fighting patterns mid-battle, adjusts his approach on the fly, and reads people better than most sorcerers twice his age. His emotional intelligence is high enough that characters actively trust him in situations where trust is hard to earn. His Black Flash timing alone shows he understands flow and rhythm at a level most fighters never reach. Where he falls short is anything that requires sitting down and planning. He's not thinking 3 fights ahead, and in conversations about jujutsu politics or strategy, he's usually the last one to catch on. But take him out of a textbook and drop him into a real situation, and he figures it out fast, making his IQ around 110 to 120. Nobara Kugisaki. Nobara sizes up a situation, commits hard, and makes it work. Her straw doll technique shouldn't be as versatile as she makes it. On paper, it's a pretty niche ability, but she keeps finding new angles and applications that her opponents never see coming. She turned a resonance technique into a psychological trap more than once. Speaking of psychological, that's really where she stands out. She weaponizes her opponent's arrogance, gets under their skin on purpose, and turns their ego into a liability mid-fight. That takes a very specific kind of intelligence that you can't really teach. She's also confident enough in her own reads that she doesn't second-guess herself under pressure, which is its own kind of mental strength. She's reactive and instinctive rather than calculated, and she doesn't pretend to be a strategist. She just wins anyway, making her IQ around 115 to 125. Panda. Panda is a lot smarter than the talking bear bit lets on. He understands jujutsu mechanics on a real technical level. This isn't a character who just swings hard and hopes for the best. He knows exactly when to flip between his different cores, reads the fight well enough to know which mode fits which situation, and does all of that while keeping track of what his teammates need. The core switching alone requires a level of self-awareness and tactical judgment that a lot of sorcerers with actual cursed energy don't demonstrate. Outside of combat, he's the one talking people down and keeping group dynamics stable, which honestly matters more than it sounds when everyone around you is either traumatized or reckless. He's not a mastermind, but his value comes from being genuinely solid across every dimension, making his IQ around 115 to 125. Toge Inumaki. Every word Inumaki uses could hurt him as much as his enemy. Too much output and he's coughing up blood, too little, and the command doesn't land. So he's constantly running calculations. When to speak, what to say, how much force is actually necessary, whether the cost is worth the result. That kind of mental discipline, applied in real time during combat, is genuinely difficult. Most fighters have the luxury of just acting. Inumaki has to think before every single move. And on top of that, he coordinates with teammates without being able to actually talk to them. He reads positioning, times his entrances, and knows when to hold back entirely, all through observation and spatial awareness. The constraint his technique puts on him essentially forced him to develop a higher level of situational intelligence than most of his peers, We don't see much of him outside of combat, so it's hard to measure how broad his intelligence is beyond that. But what he shows is sharp, making his IQ around 120 to 130. Maki Zenin. No cursed energy means Maki can't fall back on the thing that carries most sorcerers through tough fights. She never had that option. Every single win she's earned came from observation, efficiency, and a level of precision that only comes from years of refusing to waste a single movement. She reads opponents by catching tells, tracking weight shifts, and finding the gap before it even fully opens. She's also mentally tough in a way that directly supports her intelligence. She stays composed when things go sideways, which means her reads stay clean even under pressure. A lot of fighters get smarter the calmer they are, and Maki is almost always calm. She's a warrior, and her intelligence is completely built around that identity. The fact that she's not just survived, but actually thrived without the one thing the entire Jujutsu world runs on says everything you need to know, making her IQ around 120 to 130. Aoi Todo. The Jimbro thing is a bit. Underneath it, Todo is one of the sharpest fighters in the series. He broke down Yuji's combat instincts and rebuilt them in the middle of a life-or-death fight, walking someone through a fundamental shift in how they use cursed energy, in real time, while also fighting for his own life. That tells you exactly how deep his understanding of the mechanics goes. His boogie-woogie requires tracking every body on the field simultaneously, planning swaps in advance, executing them in a split second, and maintaining offensive pressure through all of it. The spatial awareness and processing speed that takes is absurd. He also has a read on other fighters that borders on intuitive. He understood Yuji's potential before almost anyone else did. Put him in a fight, and his brain goes somewhere most people simply can't reach. He's just not particularly interested in applying that intelligence anywhere else, making his IQ around 125 to 135. Kinji Hakari. Hakari built an underground fight club, commands genuine loyalty from people who don't follow rules, and designed his entire fighting style around probability theory. His domain expansion is literally a slot machine, which sounds insane until you realize he's already worked out the math on every possible outcome and built his entire game plan around variance management. He knows exactly when the odds favor him and pushes hard, and he knows when to absorb damage and wait for the wheel to spin again. That's not recklessness. That's a calculated relationship with risk that most people are too afraid to even develop. The social intelligence is real too. Running an underground operation and keeping dangerous people in line takes charisma, judgment, and the ability to read who's actually trustworthy. His intelligence is unconventional and hard to measure on a standard scale. But in the right environment, it's absolutely lethal, making his IQ around 130 to 140. Megumi Fushiguro. Megumi fights like a chess player. He's not just reacting to what's in front of him. He's setting conditions 2 or 3 moves out, positioning his Shikigami to close off escape routes, and engineering situations where his opponent's options quietly disappear before they notice. His understanding of cursed energy mechanics is deep enough that he can improvise new applications mid-fight when his original plan falls apart. The way he approaches his domain expansion shows that too. He treats it as a precision tool for controlling the terms of a fight, not a panic button. Outside of combat, he operates the same way. He's quiet, observant, and usually already 3 steps ahead of whatever conversation he's in. His weakness is the gap between analysis and commitment. He can overthink himself into hesitation at the worst moments. But the thinking itself is elite, especially considering how young he is, making his IQ around 130 to 140. Kento Nanami. Nanami doesn't guess. His ratio technique requires identifying structural weak points in an opponent's cursed energy. That's spatial reasoning applied with surgical precision under combat pressure, every single time. He brings that same coldness to every other decision he makes too. No panic, no impulsive calls, no emotional static clouding his reads. He assesses, decides, and acts, and the gap between those 3 steps is almost invisible. What makes him stand out beyond his combat intelligence is his range. He walked away from jujutsu entirely, spent years working a corporate job, learned how to navigate completely different complex systems, and then came back. That kind of adaptability across totally different environments is a real marker of broad intelligence. He understands risk and probability better than nearly anyone in the series, and it quietly shows in every call he makes, making his IQ around 135 to 145. Mechamaru Kokichi Muta. Kokichi engineered a remote puppet body capable of going on actual combat missions, while he lay bedridden and unable to move. That required deep knowledge of cursed energy mechanics, advanced engineering ability, and systems designed precise enough to function reliably in situations he couldn't directly control or respond to in real time. That alone would be impressive. But while he was doing all of that, he was also running a double-agent operation, feeding intelligence to cursed spirits while maintaining enough value to Jujutsu High that nobody caught on. He understood the political balance of power in the Jujutsu world well enough to exploit it from a position where he held almost no cards. The long-term planning, the risk management, the ability to keep two completely separate agendas running simultaneously without slipping. That's a rare combination of technical and strategic intelligence. His emotions caught up with him eventually, and it cost him everything. But the scale of what he built and maintained is genuinely staggering, making his IQ around 140 to 150. Yuki Tsukumo. Most sorcerers spend their careers asking how to beat the next curse. Yuki is asking why curses exist at all and whether the entire system can be dismantled at the root. That's not just a different question, it's a completely different level of thinking. She spent years traveling, researching, and building a theoretical framework for solving a problem that everyone else has simply accepted as permanent. Her conversations move fast and go deep: philosophy, ethics, the fundamental mechanics of cursed energy, the long history of Jujutsu society. She holds all of it at once and connects threads that other characters don't even see. She's one of only 4 special grade sorcerers, and her path to that rank ran through research and understanding rather than raw power accumulation. We don't get to see her tactical mind tested as often as some others, so there's a gap in how fully we can assess her, but the conceptual range she operates at puts her in rare company, making her IQ around 145 to 155. Suguru Geto. Geto commanded thousands of curses at once, organizing, controlling, and deploying an entire army of cursed spirits mid-fight, while also functioning as a combatant himself. The logistical demands of that alone are massive. He then took a personal ideology and turned it into a functioning movement, building a cult from scratch and convincing real people to follow him into something horrifying. He understood human psychology well enough to make mass murder sound like salvation, and he kept the whole operation running with genuine discipline across years. The man was a serious organizational and strategic threat, not just a powerful sorcerer. His fatal flaw was tunnel vision. Once he locked into his worldview, he stopped questioning it. The trauma that broke him also calcified his thinking, and that rigidity made him increasingly predictable to the people who understood what drove him. His intelligence was real and substantial. It just got trapped inside a framework he refused to challenge, making his IQ around 145 to 155. Satoru Gojo. The Six Eyes function as a real-time data processing system, letting Gojo analyze incoming techniques and adapt before most opponents have even finished executing their move. The raw perception advantage is enormous, but what matters is what he does with that information. And the answer is that he processes it faster and more accurately than anyone else alive. His teaching reveals a completely different dimension of his intelligence. He looks at a student, figures out precisely what's missing, and designs pressure that forces them to develop it. That requires genuine insight into how people think and learn, which is a different skill set entirely from combat. Where he slips is the arrogance. Decades of being completely unbeatable trained him to treat serious threats as entertainment, and that became a real blind spot when something finally came along that warranted urgency. The intelligence was never the problem. The application of it sometimes was, making his IQ around 160 to 170. Kenjaku. Kenjaku thinks in centuries. While everyone else is focused on their next move, he's already set the board up 3 generations ahead. People think they're making their own choices when they're actually executing a script he wrote before they were born. Over 1,000 years of body hopping has given him an accumulation of knowledge that nobody alive can come close to matching. Cursed energy theory across multiple eras, human behavior patterns, political structures, jujutsu mechanics from dozens of different periods in history. He's watched entire civilizations make the same mistakes and learned from every single one. The culling game is the clearest demonstration of what his mind is actually capable of. It's a binding vow engineered with such legal and structural precision that the entire jujutsu establishment couldn't easily dismantle it, even when they saw it coming. He built the rules of the game and guaranteed his position before anyone else understood they were playing. The emotional intelligence runs just as deep. He knows what people fear, what they want, where their loyalty actually lives, and exactly how to work all of it simultaneously. He's been doing this for a millennium, and he's still the smartest person in every room he walks into, making his IQ 170 or higher, and it's not particularly close. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below if I missed anything.